Today we live in a cultural and creative landscape to which we believe and we are fully committed to removing white culture. And we are fully committed to the belief that white culture must be and ultimately will be replaced. This commitment to remove the white mind and the white organization of ideals has grown paramount in our age of modernity. However, when you look at what has always predicated great ideas, great philosophy, great ideals, great imagination, great narratives, great stories, great archetypes, it has all stemmed from white culture. What has inspired the most and what has led forward the most, what has always been built from the shoulders of giants, has been white storytelling. What is most beloved is white storytelling. And fundamentally, white people deserve white games. They deserve white movies, white books, and white television shows. You cannot just simply take these things away from them. You can't tell them that their cultural heritage, that their cultural foundations and beliefs must be sacrificed or pawned off for or toward another. White people deserve white games. For white culture is beautiful and it is ideal. It has been proven all throughout time and history that white culture is both beautiful and ideal. That it has the things that we wish to gaze upon most, to gaze upon longest, and it is characteristic of all the things to which we wish to aspire towards most, and that we are also inspired by most. White culture has had the most beautiful architecture that we can never forget, some of the most beautiful music that we can never forget, some of the most beautiful cultural time periods that we can never forget, some of the most beautiful archetypes that we can never forget, and some of the most beautiful journeys that we will never forget. White culture is beautiful, but not only that, it is ideal. The premises and the principles to which it stands upon has always cultivated the most out of civilization. You see nobody moving into civilizations equally, and there's a reason for that. You see no one that invests so much time, effort, and also you don't see people hijacking everything equally. You see, it always comes down to white culture, white stories, and white characters. They're the ones who are always hijacked the most. They're the ones who are blackwashed or in some other way color washed. From their ethnicity, you're turning a white girl with red hair and you're turning her into a black one. With these cultures comes their heritage. What makes Anglo-Saxon white culture is not a diversity melting pot of a whole bunch of other random people. It comes from white people. The way that white people organize themselves, the way that white people process and reason with the world has created the white civilizations that we know today, the white people that we know today, and the white characters that we have known for the longest time today. White culture is ideal because it has the values which have stood the longest throughout time. It has the values to which numerous preceding generations have wished to hold up for the longest period of time. Even in our age of modernity, how many people beg to be beckoned back to the 1950s even? How many people beg that we go back in time? How many modern stories and modern games, despite how modernist and liberal and leftist and woke that they get, they always utilize the same church organ, soundtracks, choirs of people singing, anything that you would have found in a Christian or Catholic church, from a Protestant or Catholic background, from a white religious inspiration and cultural heritage. Why do we always go back to these things? Why does it always send chills down your back? Why does it happen? And why do these stories? Why do we always go back for them and not just move forward with our modernity or with other cultures and everything that they throw at us or what they don't throw at us and just live in the mire of nothingness? Why do we always believe in, despite how many generations go by, we love white culture? Because white culture is ideal. The stories which inflict us most are white. The ideas that we go back to, that we wish to remind ourselves of, are white. the ideas that we live out in our real lives. And the highest principles that we aspire up to have been predicated by a white culture. What lives with you as your conscious and unconscious, what operates throughout the subconscious thinking, and the very thoughts that have pervaded in other cultures outside of its direct culture to the utmost, is white culture. You cannot remove the beauty and the ideal of white culture. You cannot remove the ideas and the principles to which it inspires the most out of its observer, to remember and to cherish it and not to simply forget it, like some kind of pig trough that they have to slurp up and wait for the next serving. Modernity is the pig trough to which we will dump into the river, but it is all of our white cultural heritage in its past that we have stored inside of a glass encasing and that we have observed from close up to afar for multiple generations. And it is that one thing that the most generations have gone back to with their own children to go see, to go witness, and to repossess. That ideal is the most regenerative, the most restorative, and the most aspirational cultural background and set of ideals that we know to this place in time. We still have not forgotten Greece. We still have not forgotten Rome. We still have not forgotten the Holy Roman Empire. We still have not forgotten the Renaissance and England before the Americans left them and kicked their frickin' butts and showed you all that we were better, until then we screwed ourselves over with our woke mind virus. Today we are doing everything in our power to replace white people, to turn white people into melanin people, and we are doing everything in our power to dilute white culture, to remove white culture, to replace white culture, and to also sacrifice at the altar of modernity and postmodernism the very living essence, the rejuvenating essence of white culture, to be mixed with and polluted by other cultures and their ideals, whether they're proven or not. Because within every culture is a different set of ideals. It's a different set of values that are paramount to other values, or even a complete lack of any ideals and values. They still have yet to figure themselves out. Whatever it is, when you wish to integrate two cultures together, either one culture must dominate and consume the other, or both cultures must androgynize themselves to the point where they both will sacrifice, but maybe one more than the other, must and will sacrifice all of its characteristics and all of its attributes to the very extent and point that it is no longer a culture, that it is no longer characterized by what had once defined it. It will sacrifice ideals that no longer makes it what it once was, and therefore its achievements and its outcomes will no longer be the same as what was before. So therefore, when you blend a white culture with other cultures, you will no longer have white culture, and therefore that white culture is dead. Now you have a new culture. Is that a proven culture? The answer has always been no. This has happened all throughout history and time for thousands of years. The ideals will change. They will not be the same. There are elements of the ideals that will be sacrificed. For instance, chivalry and the chivalric code would be cut in half, or even more. And only a small fraction of those beliefs would actually remain, and maybe some other virtues that happen to actually be deficiencies that become these redundant traits that may even hold back the rest of the chivalric code, which is even lasting up until this point, now that it's been subsumed with another culture. Well, now the values that are left are barely even held up in their own. They may be also cut in half, those values, not completely destroyed, but they're nothing that they could be at their utmost. And fundamentally what you have done is that you have created a whole nother culture with possibly ideals, traits, values that are actual drawbacks from the culture that they were, air quotes, integrated into. Inherently between different cultures will always be a conflict, because different cultures represent a different set of beliefs with different levels and ratios of intensity in those separate beliefs. For some reason, even with the Bible has how many offshoot groups how many different associations and denominations of that same inherent book and belief? How many other random side religions outside of Protestantism and Catholicism have sprouted up? You have Calvinism, you have Jesuits, you have Rosicrucians, you can go down the list. There's so many random names, and that's just within the Anglo-Saxon segregate. Then you even look at the fact that ultimately Islam was also inspired off of that fundamental book, which came from Judaism. You will always find high levels of variability when you start to mix and interact separate cultures, and they will not be what they once were and what they once remained. The architecture will be different. The psychological makeup of its people will be different. Their art will be different. Their clothing and the style and the fashion of their clothing will be different. And isn't it interesting? And the most multicultural that America has become, also the most bland and blatantly unpronounced the clothing you see nowadays has become. You go back a couple of years and the clothing was far more pronounced, far more stylish. And for those who even do give a crap about what they're wearing and how stylish it may come across, there's no uniformity or unison in the fashion sense and the choice of clothes. So there is no unified culture, only a conflicted and a rivaling culture. When we look at these things, you can never sacrifice a culture and what makes it up. When you do sacrifice it, it will no longer be what it is. And if not even that, if you haven't handicapped it or sacrificed at an altar what it once was, killed off all the living matter that once made it what it was, then what you have fundamentally done is very well likely you replaced it. You allowed it to be dominated by another. And what you did is that you surrendered your heritage, you surrendered your beliefs, and you surrendered all your past convictions or the convictions of your forefathers and mothers, specifically your forefathers, the values and the ideals they were willing to die for. That has brought you here to this day. You said you were willing to surrender it, all of it, and say no more. I will take what another lives for, that my ancestors never died for, all in the pursuit of spitting on the graves of specifically today ideals that were proven for and that served the most use throughout time. When we look at what has happened to white culture, when we look at what has happened to white stories and games and movies and television shows, we have come to find that they've all been hijacked. We've come to find that they've all been color washed, and we've come to find that they have been replaced of their intellectual, philosophical, and racial value. The entire character of what makes them up now is no longer what it once was. You must make a choice. Is a character like Green Lantern white or black? Is he Jon Stewart, or is he Alan Scott or Hal Jordan? Is Batman still Bruce Wayne, or is he now suddenly a black woman? Who are these characters? Because when you fundamentally change who they are, when you fundamentally change these stories and what they are, then they no longer will be the same. What you once loved has been killed and now has been replaced with another. Just as culture is, you can never sacrifice your culture and hold it intact. It will never happen. Most specifically, when a culture has been stripped of its latent, inherent qualities, characteristics, and values, then what you have fundamentally done is that you have pillaged that culture. What we know all throughout time in history is that past generations have fought everything for their ideals, and specifically within white cultures, they have fought tooth and nail for their ideals and their beliefs. Through the very heritage and the generational sacrifices of past white men, white culture deserves its white games, movies, books, television, and fundamentally its entire philosophical framework to which it once lived by and lived in. White people deserve these things, and they deserve to uphold their values, which have been proven for the longest time throughout history as beautiful and ideal.